Hello, my name is Signe. I live in Estonia and I'm a nature guide. Today I'm going to invite you for a walk on a bog. Maybe you haven't heard this name before, but you may have heard of wetlands, mires, marshes. It's more or less the same thing. But if I tell you that there is almost 95% of water in a bog, then I'm sure you're going to ask me, but how are you going to walk on it? But don't worry, I have a solution for it. Snowshoes. But since in Estonia we have quite a number of bogs, we have actually created a name for it ourselves, which is bogshoes. So I'm just going to put them on and then we can get on the way. The idea of bogshoes is actually that the surface that touches the soft ground, snow or a bog surface, is bigger than your own feet. And this helps to walk on a soft surface. And actually the bog shoes are very old. They are considered at least as old as skis, or perhaps even older. So it means like 8,000 years. But our ancestors who used the bog shoes to go hunting or cross wet areas, of course they didn't have bog shoes like this, so they made them by themselves from the material that was readily available next to the bog, like branches of willow, or to make them even more resilient, they could use roots of spruce tree. And funnily enough, bog shoes were even put on for big domestic animals like cows or horses when there was need. Oops, who's that? Okay, so I'm ready and we can start going. Just follow me. I'm now going to tell you how the bogs have been formed. Actually, they are very unique landscapes, which you can't find in many places in the world, but luckily in Estonia we still have them. And it all goes, of course, back to the Ice Age, which on the Estonian territory finished some 10,000 years ago. And if you can imagine that after the ice melted, there was a huge, really huge lake here. And little by little, it started to be invaded by plants until a bog was formed. So the age of this bog is estimated to be 6,000 years at least. It is clear that there is 6 meters of peat down here, which means it's almost 4 times my height, such a tall layer. And under this peat layer, there is still like 20 centimeters of mud, which also implies that it's an old bottom of an old lake. I'm sure you have heard the name peat, but maybe you are not sure how peat is being formed. In an environment which is wet like a bog and there is very little oxygen, the plant residues, they don't decompose fully. And whatever is left over from the plants is accumulated as peat, just 1 millimeter per year. So that's why in 6,000 years we get a peat layer of 6 meters. In the bogs we can find bog pools or lakes, if you like. And actually the water here is kind of brownish color because it's full of organic matter, but it doesn't have minerals in it. So this means that even though the water is extremely clean, it's drinkable, actually it doesn't help against your thirst on a warm summer day because of lack of minerals. But if you just put a pinch of salt into your drinking cup, it will help. And also in summertime, Estonians like to take a swim in bog pools. And I have experienced it myself, how silky and smooth the skin and hair is after taking such a swim. And they even say that swimming in a bog pool makes you 7 years younger. So it may be that next time you see me, you don't recognize me. See what I have found here. Cranberries. These are really wild cranberries. And it's something that our ancestors have used against lack of vitamin, especially in spring and winter time. And these are actually from last autumn, because main cranberry season is in September, October. And they say that it's not only the humans, but also animals like cranberries. So for example, bears, after waking up from their hibernation, they like to come on a bog, eat those slightly fermented cranberries in order to get their digestive system going again. Because I can only imagine that being without toilet for several months, this beer plague, how we call it, really needs to be released. So yes, our ancestors have used cranberries to get vitamins. It has a lot of vitamin C, and it has also been said that 3 cranberries a day keeps any disease away. So if I would apply the famous British saying, an apple a day keeps doctor away, I can say 3 cranberries a day keeps doctor away. So I will just enjoy myself eating them. They are slightly sweeter than in autumn because they have been frozen through in winter. But they are really, really good. Okay, I will leave some for the bears as well. I have to tell another cranberry story. In the 1960s, it was estimated that even 70% of all the cranberries were harvested in Estonia. People were collecting it for themselves, but also in order to earn some extra income, they sold it to wholesale buyers. And actually, what happened was that everybody wanted to be there before their neighbor, so people started picking the berries too early when they were not ripe yet. And then the authorities in 1967 decided to fix a date before which no cranberries could be picked. And this was the second Saturday of the month of September. But like often with all kind of restrictions, you have something good in mind, but the result may not be quite as wished. So what happened was that a kind of mass psychosis was created because everybody felt they had to be in the bog now, even those who never went to the bog before or didn't even care about the cranberries. They all felt that it was obligatory to be there. And the people of my parents' generation say that work collectives were even hiring big buses in order to go there, all of them together. And there is a story of an old man who was waiting for 1.5 hours to cross a little road in his village to take his cow to the grassland because the flow of cars was just non-stop. And yes, it became as crazy as people being there at midnight with their pocket lamps and even spending night at the bog side in order to be there, the first ones at the dawn. And 13 years later, then the authorities decided that it was no worth it, and the fixed date was abolished. And this also normalized the situation. So now I would like to introduce you to the king of the bog. It's quite intriguing who is the king of the bog. But here it is everywhere you look. It's all over the place. I'm talking about the peat moss. You can see here different colors, green, reddish. There is actually 38 different peat moss species in Estonia that have been found. And the reason I call it the king of the bog is because once it starts growing, it simply invades the whole place. Because it creates an acid environment, and there are not many plants who can grow in such an environment. And what makes really interesting the peat moss I will show you is that I'm taking out a little batch here, how much water it can absorb. You see, I'm going to squeeze it. You see all the water that comes out of it. And what is left, it's just light as feather. And indeed, the peat moss can absorb up to 20 times more water than its own weight. And because of this acid environment, it's actually sterile, which means that there is almost no bacteria here. And in war times, when there was shortage of medical supplies like cotton wool or bandage, it was the peat moss that was put on wounds because it absorbs the liquid, it retains it, it doesn't release it, and it's very clean. And actually, peat moss was also used as first baby diapers because of this quality. And Estonians have always been very knowledgeable and smart in using nature for their benefit, including the peat moss that was used in households to make isolation for log houses. And it was also sometimes put between windows in order to absorb the humidity, and this way the windows would not become steamy or icy. So a really lovely plant, and what is still interesting is that it doesn't have any roots actually. It grows 1 centimeter per year on top, and it decomposes by 1 millimeter, which mostly becomes peat. So I will just put it back here. And we can move on. So when I said that the plants in the bog are real survivors, here is another one. It's Scots pine. It's actually the only pine species that we have in Estonia, so it's the most ordinary one. And believe it or not, but those Scots pines here and the ones in the forest, they are the same species. But the difference in size comes from the fact that in a bog there is very little nutrients for the pine tree to grow, and also because its roots are constantly in water. So a pine like this one here, which has a stem which is perhaps my arm diameter, it could easily be 100 or even 200 years old. And the maximum height that it can get is 4 to 5 meters, while its relatives in the forest grow perhaps 30 meters tall in 80 years. And actually there is a funny story that some tourists who were visiting Estonian bog, they were truly amazed and asked how many gardeners do you have to have in Estonia in order to take care of all these bonsai trees. So indeed, it looks like a bonsai tree. So here I would like to introduce you another plant of the bog. This is wild rosemary, and it's actually a very ancient plant. It dates back to the Ice Age, and it happens to be the only natural rhododendron in Estonia. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to shrub the leaves and smell it. It's very strong. If you would ask any Estonian what a bog smells like, I think for most people the smell of wild rosemary is the one that creates a typical bog smell. I wish I could describe it for you. It's a bit spicy, but I think the best is if you come and smell it yourself. But actually it's a toxic plant, but it is also used in traditional medicine, and even in the pharmaceutical industry it is a demanded raw material. And because of its essential oils, which give this very strong smell, and the toxicity, our ancestors have used wild rosemary to keep away unwanted guests. And here I don't mean neighbors, but rather insects and also mice. And also it has been used to give color to the wool yarn. It's kind of brownish color that it gives. So it has many virtues that can be used. So like I said before, up to 95% of bog is water, and you can see here how I'm floating on the water. Nice. You can experience it yourself. So, as I have said, there are so many things we can find and get from the bog. The delicious berries, it's a great habitat for many species, some of which are very rare and threatened. And for them, bog is the only habitat where they can live. And also it's really a place where we can come and find refuge from the city noise, be in the quiet. Just hearing the birds, oh, some of them are passing by. But the bogs also have a very important environmental role to play. There is not a single day, I believe, that passes by without any talks on climate change. And in fact, the bogs are excellent absorbers of carbon dioxide, and they are very good carbon sinks. But when bogs get drained, like has happened in many countries over the world, actually this process is reversed, meaning that bogs themselves become emitters of CO2. The hydrologists have said that in order to keep sufficient freshwater resources in Estonia, we ought to keep at least 1/3 of our bogs untouched. The bogs have also been places of refuge for Estonians in difficult times, like war times, or in case of pandemics of plague. So I have to admit that for me, it's really difficult to just walk past cranberries or any other berries in the bog without stopping and having a bite. I guess it's the hunter-gatherer blood that keeps pumping in me when I see the berries. And this actually reminds me of a contemporary Estonian writer who is reflecting on Estonians' relations with nature. And he has said that an Estonian would rather reveal the secret code of his bank card than his best berry or mushroom corner. And I believe it's true. Thank you for joining me in this virtual bog tour, and I really hope that we can meet in person in Estonia very soon.